This is no longer rap beef. This is legal warfare versus cultural domination. One man is begging the justice system to erase a moment that already destroyed him. The other is quietly engineering a hostile takeover of the entire industry. While Drake is filing appeals to survive the fallout, Kendrick Lamar is positioning himself to own 2026 before it even starts. And the most terrifying part? Kendrick hasn't even spoken yet. Forget everything you thought this beef was about. This isn't Drake versus Kendrick anymore. This is reaction versus strategy, panic versus patience, damage control versus long-term domination. One side is scrambling to clean up chaos, the other is letting the chaos do the work for him. And here's what nobody wants to admit. The moment Drake filed that appeal, he confirmed what the internet already knew. He lost. Not just the battle, the war. Because in hip-hop, explanation equals weakness. And the second you start talking to lawyers instead of talking on wax, you've already surrendered the culture. But this goes deeper than anyone realizes. Way deeper. Let me break down what's really happening here. Because this whole situation is about to flip everything you thought you understood about power in this industry. Drake has officially filed an appeal after his lawsuit against Universal Music Group was brutally dismissed. The target of his legal desperation? Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us. Now, according to Drake's legal filings, the song wasn't just rap talk. It was a dangerous accusation campaign that allegedly triggered real-world violence, a shooting involving his security, multiple break-in attempts, alleged threats so serious they forced him to move his own son to a different location. This wasn't a diss, Drake claims. This was reputation assassination. But here's where everything collapsed. The judge didn't just dismiss the case, he used Drake's own diss tracks as evidence against him. Translation, you started the fire, you don't get to sue the smoke. Think about it. Drake spent years building this untouchable image, the guy who could say anything to anyone without consequences. He went at Pusha T. He went at Meek Mill. He took shots at everyone from Common to Joe Budden to Kid Cudi. But the moment Kendrick hit back with something that actually stuck, Drake ran to the legal system. And that's the part that hits different, because in hip-hop has always had an unspoken rule. You handle your business in the booth, you don't handle it in a courtroom. The moment you involve lawyers, you're admitting you can't win the culture war. Now, this appeal doesn't look brave, it looks like pure survival instinct. Let's get into the specifics of what Drake is actually claiming here, because the legal language matters. Drake's team argues that Not Like Us crossed the line from artistic expression into defamation. They're saying Kendrick made specific accusations that damaged Drake's reputation, endangered his family, and incited violence against him. But here's where everything collapsed. The judge didn't just dismiss the case, he used Drake's own diss tracks as evidence against him. Translation, you started the fire, you don't get to sue the smoke. Think about it. Drake spent years building this untouchable image, the guy who could say anything to anyone without consequences. He went at Pusha T. He went at Meek Mill. He took shots at everyone from Common to Joe Budden to Kid Cudi. But the moment Kendrick hit back with something that actually stuck, Drake ran to the legal system. And that's the part that hits different, because in hip-hop has always had an unspoken rule. You handle your business in the booth, you don't handle it in a courtroom. The moment you involve lawyers, you're admitting you can't win the culture war. Now, this appeal doesn't look brave, it looks like pure survival instinct. Let's get into the specifics of what Drake is actually claiming here, because the legal language matters. Drake's team argues that Not Like Us crossed the line from artistic expression into defamation. They're saying Kendrick made specific accusations that damaged Drake's reputation, endangered his family, and incited violence against him. But here's where everything collapsed. The judge didn't just dismiss the case, he used Drake's own diss tracks as evidence against him. Translation, you started the fire, you don't get to sue the smoke. Think about it. Drake spent years building this untouchable image, the guy who could say anything to anyone without consequences. He went at Pusha T, he went at Meek Mill, he took shots at everyone from Common to Joe Budden to Kid Cudi. But the moment Kendrick hit back with something that actually stuck, Drake ran to the legal system. And that's the part that hits different, because in hip-hop has always had an unspoken rule. You handle your business in the booth, you don't handle it in a courtroom. The moment you involve lawyers, you're admitting you can't win the culture war. Now, this appeal doesn't look brave, it looks like pure survival instinct. TMZ just dropped new reports about the appeal, and the details are wild. Drake's team is reportedly preparing to argue that Universal Music Group actively promoted Not Like Us, knowing it contained false accusations. They're claiming the label prioritized profit over Drake's safety. But think about what that means. Drake is now at war with his own label. The same label that made him a billionaire. The same label that backed every album, every tour, every business move for over a decade. That's not strategy, that's desperation. And the internet sees it.
Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking. This appeal isn't really about Not Like Us. It's about Drake trying to control a narrative that's already escaped him. See, what people don't understand is that Drake's entire career has been built on perception management. He's not just a rapper, he's a brand, and that brand depends on him being seen as untouchable, dominant, and always one step ahead. But Kendrick shattered that perception in under 4 minutes. And once that perception breaks, everything else starts crumbling. Think about Drake's position before Not Like Us dropped. He was still being called the biggest rapper alive. He was still dominating streaming numbers. He was still the guy everyone had to acknowledge, even if they didn't like him. But after Kendrick's diss, the entire conversation shifted. Suddenly, people weren't asking if Drake was the best, they were asking if he ever was. They were going back through his catalog and questioning everything. They were analyzing his ghostwriting controversies. They were bringing up old beefs he supposedly won and asking if he actually did. Kendrick didn't just attack Drake's reputation, he attacked the foundation of Drake's legacy. And that's why this lawsuit exists. Because Drake knows that if he doesn't do something, the narrative becomes permanent. Not Like Us becomes the defining moment of his career. And 20 years from now, when people talk about Drake, they'll talk about how Kendrick ended him. So what does Drake do? He tries to turn it into a legal issue instead of a cultural one. If he can make this about defamation, about safety, about Universal Music Group's responsibility, then maybe he can shift the conversation away from the actual content of the diss. But here's the problem with that strategy. The culture doesn't care about legal technicalities. The culture cares about who won the battle, and in the court of public opinion, Kendrick already won. Now let's talk about Drake's history with lawsuits, because this isn't the first time he's tried to use the legal system to control narratives. Back in 2019, Drake's team sent cease and desist letters to people leaking his music. In 2020, he sued a woman who falsely claimed he got her pregnant. In 2022, he filed legal action against people using his likeness without permission. Drake has always been quick to lawyer up when things don't go his way. But this situation is different, because this time, he's not suing some random person or a leaker. He's going after one of the most respected artists in hip-hop. He's going after Universal Music Group. He's going after the entire system that made him successful. And that makes him look weak. Because in hip-hop, you're supposed to handle disrespect with bars, not briefs. You're supposed to respond on wax, not in court. And the moment you break that code, you lose the respect of the culture. Drake knows this, his team knows this, but they're betting that they can win the legal battle and somehow salvage the cultural one. Except it doesn't work like that. Put all that together and it looks like the perfect recipe for a desperate man trying to undo a moment that already defined him. And it gets worse for Drake, because while he's been fighting this legal battle, Kendrick has been completely silent. No interviews, no social media posts, no public statements, just silence. And that silence is louder than anything Drake's lawyers could ever say.
But here's the part that really hits different. Drake is talking, lawyers are talking, filings are talking. But Kendrick? Dead silence. And that silence isn't peace, it's contempt. Every day Kendrick says nothing, Drake looks smaller. Every day that passes without a response, without a statement, without anything, it confirms what everyone already suspects. Kendrick doesn't even think Drake is worth addressing anymore. That's the most humiliating part of all this. Because Drake is out here filing appeals, hiring legal teams, trying to force Universal Music Group into court. He's doing everything possible to make this a conversation again. And Kendrick is just living his life. He's not scrambling, he's not panicking, he's not issuing statements or doing damage control interviews. He's just existing. And his existence is enough to keep Drake in a constant state of reaction. Think about what that does to someone psychologically. Drake built his entire career on being the guy who controls the narrative, the guy who always has the last word, the guy who can end beef with a single bar or a single Instagram post. But now, he can't even get Kendrick to acknowledge him. And the leaked footage of Drake's team preparing for these legal battles shows something interesting. People close to the situation say Drake is genuinely stressed, not just about the lawsuit, but about the fact that Kendrick won't engage. Because engagement would give Drake something to work with. It'd give him a target. It would give him a way back into the conversation. But Kendrick's silence removes that option entirely. It's like Kendrick looked at Drake and said, "You're not even worth my time anymore." And for someone like Drake, whose entire identity is built on being relevant, on being the center of attention, on being the biggest name in the room, that's worse than any diss track could ever be. This isn't just about hip-hop beef anymore. This is about one man's ego being systematically dismantled by another man's refusal to care. And the culture is watching it happen in real time. Fans online have been documenting every moment of Drake's desperation, every legal filing, every attempt to shift the narrative, every interview where he tries to downplay the situation. And they're comparing it to Kendrick's complete absence from the conversation. The contrast is devastating. One man is fighting for his reputation. The other doesn't even acknowledge there's a fight happening. That's not a battle. That's an execution by indifference. Now zoom out. This is where it gets scary. While Drake is drowning in legal language, Kendrick Lamar is stacking irreversible proof. Section Dime 80, a 2011 album, just went platinum. Let that sink in. An album from 13 years ago just hit platinum certification in 2024. That's not nostalgia, that's cultural permanence. Meanwhile, Kendrick affiliate HIJACKED publicly states Kendrick is not done yet. Not he might drop something, not we'll see what happens. He is not done yet. That's a promise. And in hip-hop, when someone from Kendrick's camp makes a promise, you pay attention. Industry whispers claim 2026 will be Kendrick's most dominant year ever. Not just a good year, the most dominant year. And here's the thing, these whispers aren't coming from random blogs or gossip pages. They're coming from people inside Top Dog Entertainment, people inside PG Lang, people who actually know what Kendrick is planning. No interviews, no social media tantrums, no damage control tours. Just momentum that refuses to die. This isn't coincidence. This is long-term positioning. Let me break down what's actually happening here, because the moves Kendrick is making are surgical. First, the Section .80 Platinum certification. That's not just a random achievement. That's Kendrick reminding the industry that his entire catalog is still active, still growing, still culturally relevant. While Drake is trying to erase Not Like Us from existence, Kendrick's 13-year-old album is gaining new certifications. Second, the Hit J3 statement. That's a calculated message to the industry. It's saying, don't get comfortable. Don't think this is over. Don't assume Kendrick has moved on, because he hasn't. Third, the industry whispers about 2026. Those aren't leaks, those are strategic plants. Kendrick's team is letting people know that something massive is coming without giving away any details. That's how you build anticipation. That's how you control a narrative without saying a word. And it's working. Fans online have been analyzing every possible hint about what Kendrick might be planning. They're studying his past release patterns. They're looking at PG Lang's recent moves. They're tracking which producers he's been working with. And the consensus is building. Kendrick is about to do something unprecedented. Now let's talk about the strategic brilliance of Kendrick's silence. In a world where every artist is constantly on social media, constantly doing interviews, constantly trying to stay relevant, Kendrick's absence makes him more present than ever. Every time someone mentions Drake's lawsuit, they mention Kendrick. Every time someone talks about the state of hip-hop, they mention Kendrick. Every time someone debates who's the best rapper alive, they mention Kendrick. He's dominating the conversation without participating in it. That's power. And it's the kind of power Drake used to have. But now, Drake has to fight for every bit of attention he gets. He has to file lawsuits, tease albums, post cryptic Instagram stories. Kendrick just exists, and his existence is enough. TMZ recently reported that Kendrick has been in the studio with multiple high-profile producers, not just his usual collaborators, but people he's never worked with before. That suggests he's not just making another album, he's making a statement. And when Kendrick makes a statement, the entire industry listens. Reports also say that Kendrick has been studying the current state of hip-hop, analyzing what's working, what's not, where the culture is heading. He's not just trying to make good music, he's trying to shape the direction of the entire genre. That's not an artist, that's an architect. And while Drake is busy trying to survive the aftermath of Not Like Us, Kendrick is designing the future. Now here's the move nobody wants to talk about. Leaks claim Baby Keem is dropping his first album in 5 years. Strategically wedged between releases from Drake and Don Toliver. But that's not the scary part. Kendrick and Baby Keem were film shooting a video in New York. Reports confirm Kendrick appears on 2 Keem tracks, 1 hook, 1 full verse. This isn't a feature, this is a proxy war. Kendrick doesn't jump in the ring, he sends Baby Keem to test the industry's pulse. That's not hesitation, that's control from a distance. Let me explain why this Baby Keem move is so calculated. Baby Keem is Kendrick's cousin. He signed to PG Lang, he's been mentored by Kendrick since the beginning of his career. And most importantly, he represents the next generation of Kendrick's vision for hip-hop. So when Baby Keem drops an album with Kendrick features, it's not just about the music. It's about establishing a new hierarchy in the industry. It's Kendrick saying, I don't just dominate my generation, I'm building the next one. And the timing is perfect. Drake is dropping, Don Toliver is dropping, the industry is crowded with releases, everyone is fighting for attention. And then Baby Keem comes through with Kendrick's blessing, Kendrick's features, and Kendrick's strategic positioning. That's not competition, that's domination by association. Fans online have been speculating about what Kendrick's verse on Baby Keem's album might address. Some think he'll finally respond to Drake directly, others think he'll ignore Drake entirely and just focus on establishing Keem as the future. But here's what's most likely. Kendrick will do both. He'll drop a verse so cold, so calculated, so devastating that it reminds everyone why Drake's lawsuit exists in the first place. And he'll do it on someone else's album, which makes it even more disrespectful. Because it's saying, I don't even need my own platform to end you. The leaked footage of Kendrick and Baby Keem shooting a video in New York shows something interesting. Kendrick looks relaxed, he's smiling, he's joking around with the crew. Compare that to the reports of Drake's stress during his legal battles. The contrast is everything. One man is enjoying the process, the other is fighting for survival. And the industry is taking notes. Now, let's talk about the strategic placement of Baby Keem's album between Drake and Don Toliver's releases. That's not random, that's calculated interference. Drake drops, gets his initial buzz, then Baby Keem drops with Kendrick features, stealing the conversation. Then Don Toliver drops to a landscape that's already been shifted by Kendrick's presence.
It's like Kendrick is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. And the most terrifying part? This might just be the beginning. Because if Baby Keem's album does what it's expected to do, it establishes a new model for how Kendrick operates. He doesn't have to drop his own music to dominate. He can just elevate the people around him and let them do the work. That's not an artist, that's a movement. J. Cole declares himself the best rapper alive. Drake teases Iceman while fighting lawsuits. And Kendrick? He lets them go first. Because whoever drops first reveals their hand, and the message is becoming unavoidable. Kendrick doesn't want the big three anymore. He wants a new order. Kendrick, Baby Keem, PG Lang. No debates, no response tracks, just hierarchy enforced through silence. Let's talk about what this means for hip-hop as a whole. The Big Three conversation has dominated rap discourse for years. Drake, Kendrick, and J. Cole were supposed to be the pillars of modern hip-hop, the three artists who defined a generation. But that narrative is crumbling. J. Cole removed himself from the Drake-Kendrick beef with an apology that many saw as cowardly. Drake is fighting legal battles instead of dropping music, and Kendrick is operating on a completely different level than both of them. The Big Three isn't a thing anymore. It's just Kendrick and everyone else. And what we're seeing here is how power structures in hip-hop get dismantled, not through direct confrontation, but through strategic positioning. Not through constant releases, but through calculated silence. Not through social media wars, but through cultural influence. Kendrick is rewriting the rules of how dominance works in this industry. He's not trying to be the biggest, he's trying to be the most important. And there's a massive difference between those two things. Drake is the biggest, he has the streams, the sales, the commercial success, but Kendrick is the most important. He has the cultural impact, the critical respect, the artistic credibility. And in hip-hop, importance outlasts popularity. The bigger conversation is about legacy, about what matters when the music stops, about who gets remembered and who gets forgotten. Drake will be remembered as the guy who dominated streaming, but Kendrick will be remembered as the guy who changed hip-hop. And that's the difference that matters. Industry insiders have been quietly acknowledging this shift. Producers want to work with Kendrick. Artists want Kendrick's approval. Labels want to understand Kendrick's strategy, because he's not just winning battles, he's changing the game. And the scary part? He's doing it without saying a word. Drake is trying to undo a moment. Kendrick is building an era. One is reacting to damage, the other is preparing to reshape the landscape. If Kendrick drops after everyone else, it won't be competition, it'll be cleanup. Let me paint the picture of how this could end. Drake's appeal gets denied. Again, he's forced to accept that the legal system won't save him. Meanwhile, his album drops to mixed reviews because everyone is still talking about Not Like Us. Then, Baby Keem's album drops with Kendrick features that remind everyone why Drake ran to the courts in the first place. Then, when the dust settles and everyone thinks it's over, Kendrick drops. Not an album, not a single, a full-scale cultural event. And it's not about Drake anymore. It's about establishing Kendrick's vision for the next decade of hip-hop. It's about P. Lang becoming the most important label in the industry. It's about Baby Keem and other artists under Kendrick's umbrella becoming the new standard. Drake becomes a footnote, a cautionary tale, the guy who used to run hip-hop until he didn't. That's not speculation, that's the trajectory we're currently on, and the internet sees it coming. Fans online have been creating timelines of how they think this plays out. Most of them end with Kendrick in complete control and Drake struggling to stay relevant. That might sound harsh, but look at the evidence. Drake's last few albums have been met with decreasing enthusiasm. His legal battles are making him look desperate, his attempts to control the narrative are failing. Meanwhile, Kendrick's silence is building more anticipation than any marketing campaign could ever create. The writing is on the wall. 2026 isn't being fought over, it's being claimed. And the industry isn't asking if Kendrick will return anymore. They're asking, how catastrophic is it going to be when he does? Because this isn't about one diss track, this isn't about one lawsuit, this isn't even about Drake versus Kendrick anymore. This is about the complete restructuring of power in hip-hop, and Kendrick is doing it without saying a single word. While Drake is in court, Kendrick is in the studio. While Drake is filing appeals, Kendrick is building an empire. While Drake is trying to erase a moment, Kendrick is creating a movement. The culture has already made its decision. Now we're just watching the aftermath play out in slow motion. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Drake's appeal has any chance of succeeding? Do you think Kendrick is going to respond directly or just let his moves speak for themselves? And most importantly, do you think the Big Three era of hip-hop is officially over? Make sure you like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications because this story is far from finished. More details are dropping every single day. More strategic moves are being made behind the scenes. And when Kendrick finally breaks his silence, you're going to want to be here for it. I appreciate you for rocking with me through this deep dive. Stay safe out there. And remember, in hip-hop, silence is sometimes the loudest statement you can make. I'll see you in the next one.